He is to the American space program what the Wright brothers were to flight. This pioneer of space travel, the first American to orbit the Earth, did so again at 77, the oldest person ever in space. A veteran of 2 wars, he triumphed in the sky both as a combat-tested fighter pilot and as an astronaut. His career as a U.S. Senator spanned more than 2 decades, but Americans will remember him foremost as a man who answered the call of his nation and followed a dream of returning to space one last time. His name is John Herschel Glenn Jr., and he is a legend of air power.
We have a go for engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
As the Space Shuttle Discovery blasted off on the afternoon of October 29, 1998, John Glenn once again made history. The flight was epic on many levels, but one factor stood out over the others. It wasn't the spacecraft. This was Discovery's 25th mission. It wasn't the payload or the experiments either. It was the crew that was so significant. The 7 shuttle astronauts on this mission were part of a multinational team featuring crew members from Japan, Spain, and a 77-year-old former astronaut turned U.S. Senator named John Glenn. But why would NASA send someone that age into space? Because simply, John Glenn was no ordinary senior citizen. He is John Herschel Glenn Jr., born July 18, 1921 in Cambridge, Ohio, the oldest child of John Sr., a railroad worker and owner of a plumbing supply company, and Clara, an elementary school teacher. His parents relocated to New Concord, Ohio when John was a young boy, and he grew up in the small community. Raised by strict but loving parents of a strong Christian faith, they taught him the virtues of character, honesty, and perseverance, and he applied them to everything he did. When John graduated from high school, he and longtime girlfriend Annie Castor enrolled at Muskingum College in New Concord. John wanted to study medicine, and Annie majored in music. They planned to marry after college, but an unforeseen incident changed everything. It was Sunday, December 7th, 1941. Unsuspecting nation was devastated when the Japanese waged a surprise attack on the U.S. naval station at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
After the bombing at Pearl Harbor, John felt compelled to serve his country. Annie agreed to put their wedding plans on hold while John dropped out of school to join the Naval Aviation Cadet Program. It was there that he befriended a tall Texan named Tom Miller.
He worked hard at everything to be the very best, and he was one of the so-called cadet officers in the troop group, the students that were there.
John took every opportunity to fly during flight school and in his squadron, even logging hours on his days off. Knowing there would be stiff competition, he set his sights on flying fighters. He was anxious to see combat. In March of 1943, John Glenn graduated from flight school and accepted a commission in the Marine Corps. But before reporting for duty, he returned home to marry Annie. Soon after, Glenn and friend Tom Miller transferred into a fighter squadron at El Centro, California. Their new commander was impressed with the 2 young officers and felt they would make good fighter pilots.
We were practicing bombing and air-to-air gunnery work, and in that area, John was obviously one of the best in the squadron. He would outshoot or outbomb some of the more senior pilots in the squadron.
Within months, Glenn and Miller were sent to the war zone, flying combat missions over the Marshall Islands. But they never saw aerial combat. Most of their targets were on the ground.
The main purpose of our being there was to keep those islands from being built up by the Japanese to more or less behind the American lines. So we were put in the role of destroying their guns, their ammunition supplies, and keeping any Japanese force from supporting those facilities there.
Glenn flew 59 combat missions before returning home, where he was assigned to the Patuxent Naval Air Station as a test pilot. In the following years, he served tours of duty in China, Guam, and as an instructor in a flight instructor school. When the United States entered the Korean War, John once again took to the skies and saw aerial action in the combat zone. His motivation to down 5 of the enemy and become an ace earned him the nickname MiG Mad Marine. But the war ended with Glenn too short of his goal. For his bravery and skills in both World War II and Korea, he received the Distinguished Flying Cross 6 times and was awarded the Air Medal with 18 clusters, plus numerous other awards and commendations. In all, he flew 149 combat missions. But Glenn found himself behind a desk in Washington in the years following the Korean War. Although his family had grown to include 2 children, he was determined not to end his career as a bureaucrat. So he convinced the Pentagon to authorize Project Bullet, a promotional supersonic flight across the U.S. Given the green light, Glenn leapt at the opportunity, setting a transcontinental speed record by flying from New York to Los Angeles in 3 hours and 23 minutes. It was July of 1957. John had rocketed into the record books and become a nationally recognized hero overnight. But the euphoria was short-lived. Later that year, an America locked in a nuclear-tense Cold War with the Soviet Union was caught off guard when the Russians launched Sputnik, the world's first space satellite.
When the Soviets launched Sputnik in October 4th of 1957, what they did was demonstrate to the world that they had the capability to send a satellite overhead, certainly, but more important than that, the ability to send a nuclear weapon into space and to bring it down wherever they wished, anywhere in the world. And for the United States, for the first time in our history, our 2 great oceans would no longer protect us. We were devastated by this.
It was a tremendous shock to the American people that the Russians suddenly are able to put an object in orbit around space. This caused a considerable concern within the Congress, within the President, with the technical community to, at this point, try to catch up and get back in our position in space as considered the world leader.
The American space program was in its infancy at the time. Known by its acronym NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration was tasked with developing a launch vehicle that could send intercontinental ballistic missiles to the Soviet Union from the United States. Now there was another objective, to top the Soviets in space. The only way to beat the Russians was to put a man up there, and NASA scientists worked feverishly toward that goal.
In the 1950s, for the first time, the possibility existed. Now we were developing the vehicles necessary to send humans up, and as soon as that started to happen, people began to advocate for a manned program, a human space flight program of some type, to basically learn whether or not humans can survive in this very harsh atmosphere of space, and to be able to function in any way that would enable them to do something useful.
NASA turned to the armed forces to find qualified candidates for its manned space program. The military was stocked with fighter pilots, men who had endured extensive training, high altitudes, and could handle G-forces. These men were prime contenders as astronauts and were required to meet certain criteria: be less than 40 years old, shorter than 5 feet 11 inches, of excellent physical condition, have at least a bachelor's degree in engineering or a related field, be a qualified jet pilot with test pilot experience, and have logged a minimum of 1,500 flight hours. Additionally, the United States government downplayed the military background of the applicants.
Consequently, here they have 7 military pilots or astronauts, and so in an effort to try to take the emphasis off the military, they refused or required that the astronauts not wear uniforms at all, that they wear civilian clothes all the time.
In April of 1959, NASA introduced the 7 men selected for the Mercury spaceflight program. John Glenn was part of the group, but just barely. Standing at 5 feet 11 inches and at 38 years of age, he was the oldest of the astronauts. But the Mercury 7, as they were called, were closely matched in ability.
The original call, by the way, that NASA had was for 6 astronauts, not 7. But after they had interviewed this last small group, they couldn't make a cut between any of those 7. And so they decided to just take them all.
Their training lasted more than a year before NASA was ready to send one of the Mercury 7 into space. Wanting to be first, John was crushed when fellow astronauts Alan Shepard and Gus Grissom were chosen ahead of him.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off and the clock has started.
I knew he wanted to be early in space, but as I saw it as just an outside observer, that the space shot that was going to count was going to be the orbital. And I said, I don't know why you're so cut and picking upset, because in my opinion, they're saving you for the orbit, which is going to be the most important.
Miller was right. Even if Glenn had made the first Mercury flight, he wouldn't have been the first man in space. The Soviets had once again upstaged the Americans by sending a manned spacecraft into orbit shortly before Alan Shepard's flight in 1961. But NASA scientists didn't give up. They announced that the next Mercury mission would orbit the Earth and that John Glenn would be on board.
Power, go. RF systems, go. Propulsion, go. Mercury capsule, go. All pre-start panel lights are correct. The ready light is on. Eject Mercury umbilical. Godspeed, John Glenn. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Operating. We're underway. You're loud and clear. Roger. We're programming and roll okay.
On February 20th, 1962, millions of Americans watched their TV sets as John Glenn's Mercury spacecraft, dubbed Friendship 7, blasted into orbit. Everything went smoothly until Mission Control detected a problem halfway through the flight. A heat shield necessary to protect the spacecraft during re-entry into the atmosphere had come loose. If it failed, Glenn was in serious trouble.
There was a concern that if the heat shield was loose, when it got into the atmosphere, it would just fall away, in which case Mr. Glenn would be unprotected from the heat and could possibly burn up on re-entry.
Officials at Mission Control decided to cut the flight short after 3 orbits around the Earth. John Glenn, the veteran war hero, the seasoned test pilot, the highly trained astronaut, braced himself for the trip back home.
Of course, Glenn observed a real fiery re-entry because this rocket pack, as he re-entered, started burning up. And of course, it was molten metal coming around, and he could see out through the window. And so it was a pretty startling re-entry to him with the amount of fire and flames from the outside.
Coming down on 10, snorkels are open. Main chute is on green. Chute is out in reach condition at 10,800 feet and beautiful chute.
But the re-entry was successful, with his Mercury capsule landing safely in the Atlantic Ocean. John Glenn had become the first American to orbit the Earth, reaching a height of 162.2 miles, traveling 75,679 miles during 3 trips around the globe. The entire flight lasted 4 hours, 55 minutes, and 23 seconds. Americans rejoiced at the news of Glenn's successful mission.
The American reaction to it was unexpected. It was just total exhilaration. The country, I think it was like a reinstatement into the position of leadership again, because now we had equaled the Russians with putting a man in space.
The Soviet response to this was, well, congratulations, Mr. President. In this case, it would have been John Kennedy as the president, and congratulations, NASA and John Glenn, on finally being able to put an American in orbit. Pretty much, it was a backhanded compliment.
John Glenn returned to a hero's welcome, accepting NASA's Distinguished Service Medal from President Kennedy and taking the opportunity to address a joint session of Congress.
As our knowledge of this universe in which we live increases, may God grant us the wisdom and guidance to use it wisely. Thank you.
Ironically, his February 20th mission was the last time John Glenn flew as part of the Mercury space program. President Kennedy felt it was too risky to send a national hero into space again.
At that time, we hadn't lost anybody in the space program, and they certainly didn't want to take a chance of John Glenn being the first guy to be lost, even though he was the first. So it was more or less the political pressure from the President Kennedy, that said John Glenn won't fly again.
Glenn had been grounded without a chance to plead his case. Knowing that he had no future as an astronaut, he left the space program in 1964 and retired from the Marine Corps as a lieutenant colonel the following year. Then President Lyndon Johnson elevated Glenn's retirement rank to colonel as a symbol of gratitude for his service to the country. Now out of the space program, Glenn turned his attention to politics. It would take 10 years, however, to finally win a political race, before which he held a number of executive-level posts in the private sector. Finally, in 1974, he won a U.S. Senate seat from Ohio, serving until 1997 as Ohio's only 4-term senator. An unsuccessful bid for president in 1984 left him deeply in debt, but not in spirit. John Glenn retired from politics in 1997. He made a name for himself in the Senate as a proponent of pro-space legislation. And because of a lifelong interest in medicine, his work as the chairman of the Special Committee on Aging kept him aware of advances in health care. Ironically, his knowledge in the healthcare realm would be his ticket back to space.
He began to feel that the space program had not experimented with the problem of aging, and that he thought that some progress could be made. And I think some of the doctors at the National Institute for Aging out here that he was working with as a part of his committee's work began to agree with him.
Glenn lobbied NASA to participate in aging research on a shuttle mission. He gave his reasons, his experience as a former astronaut, his still excellent health, and the fact that NASA had medical data on him dating back to the 1950s. It took NASA Administrator Dan Golden a year and a half to mull things over before finally approving the mission.
2, 1, liftoff.
John Glenn began the many months of training it took to get ready for another trip into space. At 77, he would set yet another record as the oldest person in space, eclipsing Story Musgrave, who served his last mission at age 61.
And we have SRB separation.
It does say something about how spaceflight has changed pretty significantly in the 30-plus years since John Glenn flew between 1962 and 1998. Spaceflight has become somewhat routine in the interim, in that 30-plus years. It was an enormously risky and difficult process with Project Mercury. It has become pretty much routine and accepted with the space shuttle.
October 29th, 1998 was a busy day at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The Space Shuttle Discovery was scheduled to launch later that afternoon, and NASA technicians and crew members alike were busily preparing for takeoff. Months of training, physical regimens, and other preparations were now over. The real test would begin later in the afternoon.
We have a go for engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
As the Discovery lifted off into the October sky, the shuttle astronauts waited in anticipation to begin their mission objectives and for the glorious view of Earth from space. For John Glenn, the ride also marked a personal milestone.
I just want the record to show that we just passed 4 hours, 55 minutes, and 23 seconds, and I promised I'd take Senator Glenn on his second flight and make it a little bit longer than his first flight, and we've already accomplished that. So we're a bunch of smiling faces up here.
During the 9-day mission, shuttle astronauts took part in 83 scientific experiments, from launching a Spartan satellite to record data about the sun, to conducting medical research aimed at finding treatments for the aged. Despite the busy schedule, the retired senator from Ohio found time to remind Americans of their civic duty.
I'm proud to say that all of us on this flight voted by absentee ballot before we left. And so I just hope everybody does get out and vote. When you don't get out, if you don't get out and vote, you give up your franchise to somebody else, and that's not the American way of doing things.
John Glenn's return to space was heralded a success by NASA and the scientific community. He proved that determination and ability could supersede age. But most important, his historic flight is an example to all Americans that you can never be too old to achieve something new.
We've gone from back in those days where we were just trying to find out if we can do it, out to now where these flights are literally out on the cutting edge of science, doing things that benefit directly or have the potential of being of enormous benefit to everybody right here on Earth. And that's what the space program's all about.
Okay. He may never again fly in orbit, yet this war veteran, public servant, and space hero has given Americans a reason to follow their dreams. A role model for young and old. His name is John Herschel Glenn Jr.
The countdown is once again underway at Cape Canaveral for the attempt to launch astronaut John Glenn into orbit around the world.
Reporting to the British Broadcasting Corporation in London. The 0 hour for Colonel Glenn
En Floride, où une fois de plus, les dernières minutes de départ de l'astronaute américain.
Dato contare I minuti per l'astronauta americano John Glenn al Cape Canaveral, Florida.
يتحضر مرة ثانية لدورته حول العالم.
佛罗里达州卡纳法国太空航天员约翰格林。ケープカナベラルではアメリカの宇宙飛行士ジョン・グレンの早期を目前に。
Proyecto Mercurio han reportado que ambos, el astronauta y su cohete Friendship 7,
and report the astronaut's condition as excellent. Colonel Glenn at Cape Canaveral. And then astronaut Glenn, weather still remains the big question mark. But the countdown for John Glenn, the countdown is again underway.
With the entire world as our witness, the countdown begins at Cape Canaveral, Florida, for one of man's greatest adventures. It begins here with these men, for they are the launch team. And from now until the instant of flight, the fate of today's mission rests principally upon their skills and judgments. The countdown is their master plan, and they proceed through its ritual with unhurried deliberation. Its pages contain the timetable of order they must follow to awaken a giant machine, to test its readiness, and to prime it for the one supreme moment for which it was created.
ISO on now, meter reads 19 volts. 12 volt standby on, now meter reads 11.5. 6 volt isolated on.
Minute after minute, page upon page, the count continues. And in the night beyond this blockhouse, a modified Air Force Atlas rocket now hums with restless energy beneath a Mercury spacecraft as these men usher it toward its final minutes on Earth. Today is February 20th, 1962. And today, if all goes well, the men here will launch an American astronaut into orbit around the world in a spacecraft which he has named Friendship 7. Friendship 7 awaits its pilot. And the pilot has waited 3 years for this day. 3 long, arduous years of study, of training, of waiting. And now he's ready. His name is John Glenn. Astronaut John Glenn of New Concord, Ohio, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps. Married, father of 2 teenage children. Glenn has been a pilot over half of his 40 years, has flown in 2 wars, and is a veteran test pilot who 5 years earlier established a transcontinental flight record as the first man to average supersonic speeds across America. He volunteered for space flight, is one of 7 astronauts selected for Project Mercury, the man in space program directed by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Two teammates have pioneered the way into space for Glenn. Astronauts Alan Shepard and Virgil Grissom tested the Mercury spacecraft on trailblazing suborbital missions, proving the equipment and pushing the program to the threshold of orbital flight. And now, it's Glenn's turn.
Ready for pressurization?
Now to Glenn falls the challenge of man's next advance into space, for he has been chosen to cross the threshold gained by Shepard and Grissom and to orbit the world. So the countdown continues for John Glenn. And it continues beyond this room for Friendship 7. And it continues this moment around the world. These are John Glenn's ground-based co-pilots, men he knows well, with whom he's trained, and in whose judgment his life is entrusted this day. They are the flight controllers, and from the Mercury Control Center, within view of the launch complex, they make the decisions, issue the commands that will govern the course of the mission. To these men throughout the flight will flood the facts needed for decision. The scope of their responsibility of the entire operation defies comprehension. Now, this very instant, the countdown for flight continues around the world, on 3 continents, on islands, in ships and planes, in lands where it's summer and tomorrow is near, in lands where it's winter, and this day is just beginning.
Roger, how about you, recovery? Recovery, go. Roger, recovery. Roger, CTC, Mercury control sirens, go.
Northeast of Cape Canaveral, 1,000 miles into the Atlantic, dawn's early light spills over the British Crown colony of Bermuda, and Station 2 in the Mercury network proceeds with the countdown. The tracking and telemetry stations, 18 in all, form an avenue of electronic checkpoints around the world to monitor and communicate with Friendship 7 as it passes overhead.
Okay, this is Bermuda. Okay, this is Bermuda. Roger. Telemetry, M&O.
If radar is the eyes of the station, then telemetry is the ears. Each second, telemetry will hear and record nearly 2,000 items of information radioed down from Friendship 7. And in the months to come, engineers and scientists will find in telemetry records the answers needed for the bolder space explorations of the future.
Displays and recorders have been calibrated. Roger, thank you. Flight, this is M&O. Go ahead, M&O. All subsystems status green. Roger, M&O. Understand all systems green.
Latitude, 5 degrees north. Longitude, 10 degrees west. A spot in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Africa. And Station 3, the Rose Knot, waits under the late morning sun for John Glenn. Operating out of Trinidad, Rose Knot will communicate with Friendship 7 and monitor its journey as it streaks across the empty ocean and out over Africa.
Operation, this is Bridge. We're proceeding at slow speed at about 5 knots. The course is 198 through, over.
Beyond the Mercury station on Gran Canaria Island, in the Spanish archipelago off of the African coast, it's midday at Station 5 in Kano, Nigeria, deep in the continent of Africa. Flight data recorded here at Kano and at Zanzibar on Africa's east coast will relay through this transmitting station to London and then on to America. Far to the southeast of Kano, beyond the Zanzibar station, the ship's bell of the coastal sentry tolls the twilight of day in the emptiness of the Indian Ocean. To the east, some 2,500 miles from the coastal sentry, dust blankets the network's 8th station at Mushay, near Perth, Western Australia, halfway around the world from Cape Canaveral.
The printout, code display. Okay, that's fine. Just tweak it up on here.
Today, February 20th, is fast fading over the Australian tracking sites at Mushay and Woomera. And when Glenn arrives, tomorrow will greet him. But north and east across the Pacific, far beyond the Mercury station on the coral atoll called Canton Island, February 20th is just minutes old on Hawaii's garden island of Kauai. And there, men prepare for the arrival of Friendship 7.
On board site and ready for 165 check. All Roger. The transmitter is good. All Roger.
Eastward again, deeper into the day that will soon awaken over the Americas. Eastward to the Gulf of California and to the Mercury station at Guaymas, Mexico.
Still good. Just waiting for liftoff. M&O10, status green. Proceeding with pre-pass calibrations.
North of Mexico, in the pre-dawn along the west coast of the United States, the mountaintop station at Point Arguello, California, waits out the long countdown, ready to track John Glenn.
Roger, Aggie. What is the present count? Roger.
Southeast now, to the farmlands of Texas, where the station at Corpus Christi continues its preparations for flight.
Primus count in Texas, please. Affirmative. Roger. All systems, would you please commence pre-flight calibrations at this time, since the countdown is progressing normally. Advise me when you have completed them.
Far to the north and east of Corpus Christi beats the heart of the worldwide Mercury network, the computing and communication center that bonds it into a working entity. This is the Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. Through here funnels the voice and teletype communications that link the global stations to Mercury control. The computers enable men to reach judgments within the flashes of time allowed for control of a spacecraft that moves faster than a brain can react. Throughout the flight, the computers will generate recommendations on whether the mission should continue or be aborted. They will determine locations of the spacecraft, the time it should begin re-entry, the point at which it will land. And the most vital of these findings will be transmitted instantaneously to Cape Canaveral. Around the world, all is ready. The men, the stations, the space vehicle. And now reporters learn from the astronaut's information officer if the most vital of all elements is ready, the man himself, John Glenn. What are the thoughts of a man about to rocket into history? Glenn is the astronaut, the man who will challenge space. But he is just one member of an international scientific endeavor that requires the genius and skills of some 40,000 other men and women scattered throughout the world. From the engineers and technicians who produce the space vehicle to the crews now preparing to launch it. From the tracking experts who will chart his voyage around the globe to the sailors now waiting at sea to recover him. Behind this day stands years of preparation, of research and testing, of planning and training. And the purpose of it all is knowledge. Knowledge of space and of how effectively man and spacecraft can function together in its hostile environment. Knowledge that will serve as the basis for space explorations of the future. Hard-won knowledge of benefit to all men, bought by sacrifice and dedication and courage. Now, just a handful of minutes remain. until the spacecraft crew on the service tower called for the pilot of Friendship 7.
If you and the astronaut are ready, you can proceed with insertion. Oh, Roger. Okay, John. You're ready.
The sound of John Glenn's life. His heartbeat, you hear, will flow from Friendship 7 throughout the flight, informing those on the ground how well he endures the trials ahead. Into the soft light of this Florida dawn emerges Friendship 7, making its debut to the day of its destiny. The Mercury Atlas stands alone, waiting to depart this Earth. 250,000 pounds of rocket, with thrust equal to 3.5 million horsepower, all to hurtle a 168-pound astronaut into space.
All stations. Gantry is in launch position. KMR,
and S-band beacons are on. Start interrogation in 1 minute.
The countdown sweeps closer to the moment of flight, and recovery teams here at the Cape and around the world ready themselves to aid the astronaut. Above all else, John Glenn's safety is paramount, the dictating factor in all planning. Never in all of history have so many people shared, without censorship, an adventure of such magnitude. Through all news media in all languages, all the peoples of the world are witness to this exploration of space, to its success or failure.
T-minus 15 minutes. Mark, T-minus 15 minutes and counting. There will be no smoking and a blockhouse until further notice.
Okay, this is Bermuda.
Go ahead.
We just logged on our computer. Stand by for an estimate.
Roger. Standing by, Bermuda.
Estimate 5 minutes, okay? 5 minutes.
You want us to continue to count?
I suggest you take it down to T-minus 7. We may have it by then.
Roger. You want us to hold, Bermuda?
We would like to hold at 7 and rerun a B-sim. We lost our main power on the computer and we just want to check that nothing else has gone wrong.
What do you estimate?
Somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, Dave.
Can't you expedite?
Make it 5.
All stations are holding at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Estimate 5 minutes.
We just got to go.
You ready? Are you ready to continue?
Green. Okay, go ahead.
Green.
Go ahead, Cape.
Your attention, please. On my mark, we will pick up the count at T-minus 6 minutes and 30 seconds and counting.
The time nears, and soon, this Earth path indicator in the capsule will begin showing John Glenn his changing positions above the world.
Mark, 57 seconds. Stand by to start EPI on my mark. Roger. Minus 3, 2, 1, mark. Roger, EPI is minus 45. Minus 40. Status check, pressurization. Lock stacking. Have a braking high level light. You are go. Water systems, go. Range operations. Mercury capsule, go. All pre-start panel lights are correct. The ready light is on. Eject Mercury umbilical. Oil evacuate. Mercury umbilical clear. Mercury evacuate. Lights on. All recorders to fast. T-minus 18 seconds and counting engine start.
May the wee ones be with you, Thomas.
Good Lord, ride all the way. Godspeed, John Glenn. 10, 9, 8, 7. 3. Roger, backup clock is started. seconds. 65, and still looks real good from here. 70 seconds, leaving a nice vapor trail now. Looks real fine.
Looks good back, G. He's got it.
80 seconds and looks real good from here. 85. 90. 95. Flame powder is bellowing out now.
Tape is go. We're standing by for you.
Roger, tape is go and I am go. Our capsule is in good shape. Fuel 103, 102, oxygen 78, 100. Cabin pressure holding steady at 5.8. Amps is 2.6. All systems are go.
Roger, 20 seconds to Seco.
Seco.
Roger.
Sustainer engine cutoff. The moment when the final Atlas engine will shut down.
Say again.
When Friendship 7 should separate from the booster rocket and begin orbital flight.
Seco. Lots of grades fired. Okay. Roger, 0J, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around. Oh, that view is tremendous.
To John Glenn now belongs an awesome panorama. The world curving beneath him, just as it was filmed from an earlier Mercury capsule.
I could see the booster during turnaround just a couple of hundred yards behind me. It was beautiful.
Roger, 7. You have a go. At least 7 orbits.
Roger, understand go for at least 7 orbits. Friendship 7 can see clear back a big cloud pattern way back across toward the Cape. Beautiful sight.
Roger, still reading you loud and clear. Next transmission, Bermuda.
Roger, understand. Next transmission, Bermuda.
Friendship 7, Bermuda has you.
Roger, Bermuda, stand by. This is Friendship 7, fuel 103, 101, oxygen 78, 100. This is very comfortable at 0G. I have nothing but very fine feeling. It just feels very normal and very good.
Roger, Friendship 7. How does he look, Bermuda?
Looks real good, Cape. Surgeon reports everything okay, all systems okay. Good voice contact both ways.
Roger. Friendship 7, anything to report on control system checks?
Not yet. Everything appears to be going okay. I'm now on the yaw part of the check. Coming off right on schedule.
Very good, very good.
So far is excellent. Very good. No problems at all so far on control.
Roger. Friendship 7, it's Bermuda. You're cutting out on UHF. If you read, go to HF.
Roger, going.
Friendship 7, Bermuda Capcom on HF. Friendship 7, Friendship 7. Friendship 7 will read you very weak. Give me your status on control system check, please.
Friendship 7, clear Capcom. Read you. This is Friendship 7. Horizon is a brilliant blue. There, I have the mainland in sight at present time coming up on the scope. We have a beautiful view of the African coast, both in the scope and out the window. Out the window is by far the best view. Part of the Canaries was hit by clouds. I can see dust storms down there blowing across the desert. A lot of dust. It's difficult to see the ground in some areas. Over. Friendship 7, you're stating. Tell me, over.
Friendship 7, this is Kano Capcom. I read you loud and clear. How do you read me? Over.
Roger, We've had dusty weather here, and as far as we can see, a lot of this part of Africa is covered with dust. So just exactly the way it looks from up here, too. Roger, will you give us status report, over? Roger, this is Friendship 7, fuel 9098, oxygen 78100, cabin pressure holding 5.6 at present time. And preferring to take Zilo still at present time. Roger, do you want to stand by for retro sequence time, area 1, Charlie? Roger, going back on ASCS, yaw check, okay. It's a little different display than I had really anticipated, but it checks okay, and I can pick up yaw. I have to be about 5 Friendship 7, you are fading rapidly.
Across Africa, races Friendship 7 at 17,545 miles an hour, 300 miles a minute, 4 miles for every heartbeat of John Glenn. Friendship 7 streaks through the night of tomorrow and races toward the dawn of yesterday. Above the Indian Ocean flashes Friendship 7, far beyond human sight, seen only by the electronic instruments of the Coastal Sentry as she records the lightning passage of the man in space. For John Glenn, the familiar time references of Earth no longer apply, for he journeys around our world in just 88 minutes, outracing the sun that needs 24 hours to circle the same globe.
Friendship 7, this is Musée Contact. Friendship 7, this is Musée Contact. Do read, over. Hello, Musée Contact. This is Friendship 7, reading you loud and clear. How me? Roger, Friendship 7, Musée Capcom. How me, over. Roger, how you doing, Gordo? We're doing real fine up here. Everything is going very well, over. Very good, John. You sound good. Roger. That was sure a short day. Time passes rapidly, huh? Yes, sir. Right. Shortly, you may observe some lights down there. You want to take a check on them out to your right, over? Roger. I'm all set to see if I can't get them in sight. Roger. Any symptoms of vertigo or nausea at all, over? Negative. No symptoms whatsoever. I feel fine, over. Good show. Roger. I do have a lights in sight on the ground, over. Roger, understand. They're just off to your right there? That's affirmative. Just to my right, I can see a big pattern of lights, apparently right on the coast. I can see the outline of a town and a very bright light just to the south of it. Roger, that's Perth and Rockingham you're seeing there. Roger, the lights show up very well, and I'll thank everybody for turning them on, will you? Roger, sure will, John. Wyman, Friendship 7 on UHF. Do you receive? Over. Roger, Friendship 7, loud and clear. Over. Roger, this is Friendship 7, loud and clear with you also. Are we still go from Control Center? Over. Roger, we're still go. Roger, Friendship 7. All systems are go in the capsule. Friendship 7, Glamis, if you have a chance, could you give us a blood pressure check? Over. Roger, Friendship 7, we'll give blood pressure check. I still have some of these particles that I cannot identify coming around the capsule occasionally, over. Roger, how big are these particles? Over. Very small. I would indicate they're of the order of a 1/16 of an inch or smaller. they drift by the window, and I can see them against the dark sky. Just at sunrise, there were literally thousands of them. It looked like just a myriad of stars. Over.
Guaymas LOS. LOS. Loss of signal. Guaymas has lost contact, and Friendship 7 streaks home, an unseen comet darting across the land of its origin.
Canaveral contact, how do you copy, over?
Friendship 7 to Canaveral, read you loud and clear. Helm me, over.
Roger, Friendship 7, Canaveral contact, read loud and clear. Stand by for Capcom, please.
Roger.
Roger, still reading you. 7, this is Cape, go to Bermuda now.
Roger, this is Friendship 7.
Friendship 7, this is Bermuda Capcom.
Roger, this is Friendship 7. I'm controlling fly-by-wire present time. I have no left yaw, low thrust.
Minor trouble aboard Friendship 7. A malfunction in the automatic control system was causing the spacecraft to yaw in skid-like fashion, away from its proper flight attitude. But Glenn is overriding the faulty system, and now manually controls Friendship 7 on fly-by-wire, directing its movements by hand control, much like a pilot flies a plane.
On fly-by-wire at present time. Understand?
Friendship 7, this is Kano Capcom standing by.
Hello, Kano.
Friendship 7, we have telemetry solid and check all your systems out okay. We'll remind you to start pre-dock side checklist as soon as you lose contact with us.
Roger, Friendship 7.
Friendship 7, Friendship 7, this is Musée contact. Friendship 7, this is Musée contact. Do read, over.
Okay, this is Friendship 7 to me.
Your Friendship 7, Musée Capcom.
Will you confirm that your landing bag switch is in the off position, over? That is affirmative. Landing bag switch is in the center off position.
Roger, you haven't had any banging noises or anything of this type at higher rates?
Negative.
Roger, they wanted this answer.
Masked behind that routine report, the first hint of potential disaster. It came when astronaut Cooper relayed a request from Mercury Control, asking Glenn to check the status lights for the capsule's landing impact bag. Glenn reports status normal, but ground stations are now receiving an ominous chilling signal, an indication that the heat shield on Friendship 7 seems to have come loose.
Friendship 7, Hawaii contact. Hawaii, Friendship 7, over.
Friendship 7, this is Hawaii Capcom. Now you can still consider yourself go for the next orbit.
Affirmative, I am go for the next orbit.
Roger, understand it. MCC confirms that they are go at the present time for third orbit.
Friendship 7, this is California contact. California contact, do you read, over?
Hello, California contact, Friendship 7, loud and clear, how me?
Roger, Friendship 7, this is California Capcom. Read your loud and clear, John.
Roger, receiving you much better now, Wally. Very good.
John, the Aeromeds are real happy with you. You look real good up there.
All right, fine. Glad everything's working out. I feel real good, Wally. No problems at all.
Good show. We're real pleased to let you goodbye this time. We'll see you next time around.
This is Mercury Control. We now have a contact with our Guaymas, Mexico station and with the Corpus Christi, Texas tracking station. The Friendship 7 spacecraft is now committed to its third orbit. This is Mercury Control.
In Mercury Control at Cape Canaveral, a decision must be made, and soon. The signal pulsing down from Friendship 7 indicates still that the heat shield is loose. Could the signal be erroneous? There is no way to tell. But if it's true, then John Glenn could perish in a searing inferno when he plunges back into the atmosphere. The retro rockets that slow the spacecraft and head it back toward Earth are strapped over the shield. If they were left on after retro fire, instead of being jettisoned as in normal re-entry, then their straps might hold the shield in place before they burn off. They might possibly save Glenn from the 3,000 degrees of re-entry heat until he's deep enough into the atmosphere for its force to hold the shield in place. But the decision must be made soon. Even now, Glenn is streaking toward the United States, and he must begin the retro sequence 300 miles west of California if he's to land in the planned recovery area 700 miles south and east of Florida.
We'll give you the countdown for retro sequence time, John. You're looking good.
Roger, we only have 50 seconds to retrograde, over.
That's affirm. I'll give you a mark, 45 mark.
California, this is Cape Flight.
Go ahead, Cape Flight.
We'd like to leave the package on at least through Texas. So tell him to keep his retro jettison switch off.
John, leave your retro pack on through your pass over Texas.
20 seconds.
Roger. Five, four, three, two, one, fire.
Roger. Retros are firing.
Oh, Roger, baby.
Are they ever? It feels like I'm going back toward Hawaii.
Don't do that. You want to go on the East Coast.
Roger, fire retro light is green.
All three here.
Roger. Roger, retros have stopped. Hunter,
keep your retro pack on until you pass Texas.
That's affirmative.
Shot. That's real good looking flight from what we've seen.
Yes, sir. Looks good, Wally. We'll see you back east.
Right.
Good boy.
Texas, Capcom, Cape Flight.
Go ahead, Cape Flight. Go ahead.
We have decided to re-enter with the pack on.
Texas, Capcom, Christian 7. We are recommending that you leave the retro package on for the entire re-entry. This means that you will have to override the 05G switch, which is expected to occur at 0443. This also means that you will have to manually retract the scope. Do you read?
This is Friendship 7. What is the reason for this? Do you have any reason? Over.
Not at this time. This is the judgment of Cape Flight.
Roger. Say again your instructions, please. Over.
We are recommending that the retro package not, I say again, not be jettisoned. This means that you will have to override the 05G switch, which is expected to occur at 044353. This is approximately 4.5 minutes from now. This also means that you will have to retract the scope manually. Do you understand?
Roger, understand. I will have to make a manual 05G entry when it occurs and bring the scope in manually. Is that affirmed?
That is affirmative. Friendship 7.
Roger. Go ahead, Cape, Friend 7.
Recommend you go to the attitude and retract the scope manually at this time.
Roger, retracting scope manually.
While you're doing that, we're not sure whether or not your landing bag has deployed. We feel it's far safer to re-enter with the retro package on. We see no difficulty at this time in that type of re-entry. Over.
Roger. Understand.
7, this is Cape. The weather in the recovery area is excellent. 50-foot waves. Only one jet cloud coverage. 10 miles visibility.
Roger. Friendship 7. Go ahead, Cape. You're going out.
We recommend that you retro pack upon reaching 1 to 1.5 G. Do you understand? Over. Amen. 7, this is Cape transmitting blind. Recommend
Suddenly, all contact with John Glenn and Friendship 7 is lost.
This is Friendship 7. I think the pack just let go.
Friendship 7, this is Cape. Do you read?
This is Friendship 7. A real fireball outside.
7, this is Cape. Transmitting blind.
Okay, Friendship 7, over.
7, this is Cape. Do you read? Over.
The furnace-like heat of re-entry has created a barrier of ionization around Friendship 7, halting all voice communication. plunges back toward Earth, a fiery meteorite.
Okay, Friendship 7, over.
Friendship 7, this is Cape. Do you read, over?
Okay, Friendship 7, do you receive, over?
The thickening atmosphere breaks his descent, slowing Friendship 7 from 17,500 miles an hour to 1,300 miles an hour in slightly over 3 minutes. And the forces of gravity slam against John Glenn until he weighs 8 times his normal weight.
Okay, Friendship 7, do you receive, over?
Seven, this is Cape, transmitting blind. Your IP is within 1 mile of the uprange destroyer. Voice call is Steelhead.
Steelhead is the code name for the destroyer Noah, waiting to recover Friendship 7. But John Glenn cannot hear the message.
Right around 4:43, flight. It was about on time.
Keep talking now.
Friendship 7, this is Cape, over. Friendship 7, this is Cape. How do you read, over? All right, you're reading you loud and clear. How you doing?
My condition is good, but that was a real fireball, boy. I had great chunks of that retro pack breaking off all the way through.
Very good. It did break off. Is that correct?
Roger. Altimeter off the pack indicating 80,000.
Roger. Reading you loud and clear.
Rocking quite a bit. I may still have some of that pack on. I can't damp it either.
Seven, that's proposed interception. Over.
Friendship 7 going to drogue early. It's a rocky first drogue came out. Drogue is out. Roger, drogue came out at 30,000 in about a 90-degree yaw.
Roger, is the drogue holding on?
Roger, drogue looks good.
Roger.
Scope did not come out. Roger, pumping the scope out.
Yes, over.
Say again. Roger, re-entry checklist complete. Standing by for me at 10.
Roger.
Coming down on 10, snorkels are open. Roger. Main chute is on green. Chute is out in race condition at 10,800 feet in. Beautiful chute. Chute looks good. On O2 emergency, and the chute looks very good. Rate of descent has gone to about 4.2 feet per second. The chute looks very good. Hello, Mercury Recovery. This is Friendship 7. Do you receive? Mercury, Friendship 7. This is Steelhead. Loud and clear. Over. Right here, Steelhead. Friendship 7. The chute looks very good. Over.
Home is the Voyager. Behind, a journey of 81,000 miles through 3 days and 3 nights in just 4 hours and 56 minutes. At 3:04 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friendship 7 comes to rest aboard the United States destroyer Noah, and John Glenn returns to the people of Earth. A change of clothes, a breath of cool air, a short debriefing. Then, Glenn leaves the Noah, heading for the aircraft carrier Randolph, under the golden splendor of his 4th sunset of the day. His name, John Herschel Glenn Jr. Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps. Married, father of 2 teenage children. Today, John Glenn and the Mercury team challenged space, and they won. Today, John Glenn dared space. Other brave men will follow tomorrow, and in the tomorrows after that. Each step more bold as we reach out to explore the universe around us.
Welcome to the DroneScapes Aviation channel. Aviation, the art of aeronautics, began with the dreamers, inventors, and daredevils who dared to defy gravity. The journey of aviation was nurtured by pioneers like the Wright brothers, whose first flight marked a historic milestone. The role of aircrafts in world wars was groundbreaking, dramatically changing warfare strategies. This initiated a technological evolution in aviation, transforming the simplistic wings of a biplane into the thunderous roar of jet engines. Let's journey through the ages of aviation. Behind every great aircraft, there were great minds. These visionaries, like Sir Frank Whittle, the innovator of the turbojet engine, redefined air travel. Then there's Skunkworks Kelly Johnson, the genius behind the SR-71 Blackbird. His designs combined speed, stealth and power, crafting machines that dominated the heavens. The contributions of these pioneers have left an indelible mark on the canvas of aviation, shaping the course of history and inspiring generations of engineers and aviators. Each epoch in aviation history gave birth to extraordinary aircrafts, each with their own unique features and roles. The Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was a marvel of speed and stealth. The F-105 Thunderchief, a supersonic fighter bomber, was vital in the Vietnam War. The P-51 Mustang, a long-range fighter, was critical in World War II. The P-47 Thunderbolt, a heavyweight fighter, was used extensively in the same war. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, is a close air support icon. The Messerschmitt Me-262 marked a leap forward in aviation technology. Each of these game changers were instrumental in their eras, and their legacies still resonate today. Beyond the game changers, there are those that have transcended their practical roles to become icons. The Concorde was not just an aircraft, it was a supersonic symbol of luxury and speed. The B-52 Stratofortress, a strategic bomber, is an icon of power and resilience. These magnificent machines and others like them have become much more than just aircrafts. They are enduring icons that encapsulate the audacious spirit, the relentless innovation, and the boundless ambition that define the world of aviation. For more amazing aerial footage, and to join us in this incredible journey, check out the DroneScapes YouTube channel.
If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.